All right, folks, it is the Lex and Pete show. It is Thursday night. We actually were planning to record on Wednesday night, but we postponed it because we caught some whiffs of some big news coming. And if you're tuning into the show, I'm sure you know exactly what type of news we're talking about. So we got Angelo on here to talk about his trade for the Most Athletic Sons. We're also going to have George from Two Pins joining us shortly to talk about both of the trades that he made yesterday. And then we also have some beef to talk about with McMorrow and Bowen, and then some other stuff that we want to talk about as well regarding McMorrow. But first, as always, we will start with a word from both of our sponsors. Number one being Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at sundog_multimedia. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's easy peasy moving and service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it. They will do it. Easy peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. All right, boys. So we are here to talk about some big news in the league. I feel like we usually start off by doing like a little league check-in. I don't really think it's worth doing that right now. We do have some big news to talk about. I think a lot of people are here to talk about the two big trades. Both involved Two Pins. One of them involved Angelo and the Most Athletic Sons, but we're going to wait for Two Pins to get in here so we can talk about that. First, we'll start with a little bit of older news. I feel like it's maybe appropriate to start with that so we can kind of close the door on that. I feel like we're at the end of this beef. Of course, I'm talking about McMorrow and Bowen. I don't even have the trade in front of me. I'm not sure if you know the exact details, Pete, but earlier in the week, Anthony Richardson was announced as going on the IR. He's going to be missing up to or at least 4 weeks. He has a shoulder injury. I believe it's his throwing arm. I think it's like the same injury that Derek Carr had, but Carr had it on the other side, so he's able to play through it. So with Richardson being out for at least a month, Bowen decided to make a move, go out and get Gardner Minshew. McMorrow had him. I believe it was a 25 or 24 second.
Yeah, so
And
Bowen got Gardner Minshew in the original trade. Bowen got Gardner Minshew. McMorrow got Finesse Bebe Jones 25 third and Mikey Bowens 24 second in the original trade.
yeah, so pretty much immediately after that trade was accepted, Bowen commented in the league chat saying that he thought it was for 2/3. I believe he thought that 24 second was going to be a 24 third, also
26 third.
owned by
Yeah.
Mikey Bowen, Josh Winsberg, go Tigers. And I will say, I believed him. I did believe him because I was actually on the phone. I wasn't able to answer him, but he was texting me and he was saying, should I make a move for Minshew? Should I trade 2/3 for him? What do you think? Is it even worth doing? Is it stupid? Yada, yada, yada. So I do know that leading up to that acceptance of the trade, he was under the impression that he was going to be making a move for 2/3. I think Bowen was just moving a little too fast. Didn't check it, saw the Go Tigers pick, assumed it must have been a third, and just smashed accept to get it through. So I do believe that is the case. I think Bowen made a genuine mistake. I don't think that he would react that quickly if he was already regretting the price that he paid. The problem is, what can we really do about it, right? He's coming to me as commissioner. He's pissed. He's talking about leaving the league. He's talking about doing this and that, causing a whole stink. But there's really not much I can do. So I came up with an idea, right? We have the show. We have the Lex and Pete show. I was ready to do an emergency episode that night. Just record for this week, get it out of the way. It felt like we really had a hot topic here. McMorrow was chirping. Bowen was chirping. Everybody had an opinion. So I felt like we had to get that out there. So I reached out to both parties. I said, come on the show. We can have somewhat of an arbitration hearing because, I think that we can agree that isn't overpay for Gardner Minshew, even though he is getting that starting role for now. It is limited. It comes with a shelf life. So we can agree that it was an overpay. And if McMorrow was a willing participant, then we could discuss what an even trade would be, because I still felt like Bowen would have had to take it on the chin, maybe still overpay by slightly more, but at least get that second back, maybe, pay that third and, add on a little bit something extra. So I wanted to go ahead and do that. I reached out to both parties. They didn't answer me within 15 minutes. They completed a trade between the two of them where they kind of made it right. And that was exactly what I was aiming to do on the show. I felt like we could make some content out of it. They decided to take it in their own hands and get rid of it. And then I guess after some reflection, McMorrow felt like his kindness was taken for weakness. He wanted to reverse the trade, and he was kind of trying to revive the drama. Pete, do you feel like I covered everything there?
Yeah, I think it's a good quick summary of it.
So you were telling me that you were telling me the other day that you felt like McMorrow was maybe plotting some type of revenge. You do feel like maybe we're starting to move past that. Maybe he slept on a little bit. I believe you have a statement that you want to read from him.
Yeah, it wasn't really so much plotting revenge, but he was pissed. He felt taken advantage of. I asked McMorrow how he felt about it, and he delivered the following statement. To all whom it may concern, I feel the need to speak on the recent trades with the Zits as well as my character. I offered Minshew for a Mikey 24 second and Bebe 25 third, and it was accepted by Zach. Zach said, wait, right away, which made me think there was something wrong. When I found out it was a reading issue, I felt bad because I truly could have been a mistake on his end. However, I was a nice guy and put my character first before the team. Due to recent questions about my character / integrity / responsiveness / etc., I felt like this was a great way for me to show this league who I truly am as a person. I hope everyone saw the intent of why I reversed the trade. Once I saw that this is the second time Zach has had a quote unquote reading issue via a Simcoe leaked text, I felt betrayed. This is a reoccurring mistake, one which shouldn't happen repeatedly. I felt like my kindness was taken as a weakness. Did Zach accept the trade knowing the second in there, only to pull it back out right away and guilt me into giving it back for a lesser cost? Was that his plan the last time with Simcoe as well? I am not one to question anyone's character or intent, yet I am left here wondering why I gave back what I gave back. He got his player and his way. I got left with regret. Was reversing this trade to improve my character and integrity worth moving off a second round pick? I have no idea. As of 3:25 p.m. on Monday, October 9th, I'd sent Zach an offer to rectify this own rectification. Who knows if it goes there or not? Who knows if it goes through or not? But that's where I will let this case end. Thank you to all that took time to listen. Matthew, Carson Wentz, crying emoji, crying emoji, crying emoji, McMorrow.
So I have my thoughts on it. I mean, I've been thinking about this for a lot. We've been talking about a lot. Angelo, as kind of like a third party, right? I feel like, me being somewhat of the league government, Pete, he's not officially involved, but he's pretty involved as well. I kind of know his thoughts as well. What are you thinking? It's just like a manager in our league, kind of an outside looking in perspective.
Yeah, knowing both parties and kind of how this all probably went down is right off the bat, Bowen, you got to read the trade.
Yeah.
You got to know that,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're going to hit accept to whatever it was, like I hope you read the terms and conditions because it's really small and it's only 3 things on the screen to look at right there. So, that could be the mistake right away. But, once McMorrow came out and, he was the good guy and he did the right thing and he, changed the trade. Well, how does he even know that it was a mistake? Like he sent the offer. It doesn't sound like there was any correspondence. It wasn't like Bowen and them said, yep, I'm going to send you 2 third rounders. And then there was a mistake on McMorrow's part, right? It's just Bowen misreading the offer and accepting it. And then, McMorrow taking the high ground and compromising. That's on him. He's got to know what he's doing right then and there. You can't have buyer's remorse 24 hours and say, wait a minute, well, everything's off. We're big boys, and I think reading is a pretty important part of trades.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the simple answer is really just tough shit, right? And that was gonna be my answer to Bowen as well. I saw an opportunity to maybe make some content out of it, but as I've said, as commissioner, if McMorrow said no, like he had my full support on it. Like I'm not gonna force him to reverse a trade that somebody, we're all adults here, we're grown men. Bowen, it's his own fault. I mean, that very morning he was in a group chat talking about how he fleeced Big Brain on the Brock Purdy trade, all that. So I was gonna say, if McMorrow said tough luck, like, it's charge it to the game. lesson learned. You got to read your trade offers before you accept. Knowing how Bowen does his trade negotiations mostly, I'm assuming it was just a series of back and forth offers and counter offers. So Bowen probably offered 1/3, and then he thought McMorrow would come back with 2 or something like that. That's how I'm sure that we probably ended up at it. Because like you said, what was going on? Were they having a conversation there? Like, were they talking about that? So
There's
like,
no
where
way.
where was the confusion really made there, right? So that's what I don't get. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it comes down to like we did not reverse as the league. We did not even vote on it. We did not reverse that first trade at all. Like I said, that's just not a precedent that I'm willing to set because then all of a sudden, we can have anybody try and make that protest. Like if there's a negative reaction to a trade, like, oh shit, I thought it was this pick, not this pick, or anything like that. You got to just read your trade offer. So if McMorrow said that, he had my full support. He decided to be a nice guy. He decided to make things right with Bowen. That's his choice. That's his bed. He has to lay in it now. So, yeah, I mean, it's really tough luck. So if he has a problem with it, I guess he can continue to raise that. It does sound like he's kind of accepting where we're at with that decision. So I don't know if there's too much more to say on it. Pete, you kind of always have that inside scoop with McMorrow. Do you have anything more to add to it?
I mean, like just to come right out and say it, Bowen's a bully. Like Bowen is a dynasty trade bully that needs to be said and established, and it has been for 3 years. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I didn't know about dynasty, but Gilo, and like raising his hand right there, he's a victim. Bowen came in this league in 2020 off the rip and took advantage of the people he knew didn't know dynasty. And there's several victims out there. We know Bowen is a bully. I'm not giving anything back to the bully. Like the bully fucks up, that's on him. No way am I making
Right.
that back with McMorrow.
You know,
No way.
we refer to Bowen as Mr. Patagonia. He is King Fleece
Yeah.
of this league, and kudos to him for doing it. It's the Bowens have a spell that they put on people when they send trades. It's like, this is great, and it's like, it's not great.
And that's it. Like kudos to him. He got it done. I think if McMorrow waited like 12 hours, he would have or even like 2 hours, he would have realized he shouldn't have made the trade back. But Bowen backed him into a corner and made him give him back to him right away. So good for Bowen. The only thing else I'll add is November 15th, 2020. I sent Simcoe an offer, 26 fab for nothing. He accepted it by accident almost 3 years ago, infancy of the league, 26 fab for nothing, November 15th, 2020. The league voted on it. It was almost a unanimous decision not to reverse the trade. The precedent was set right there. We don't reverse trades in this league. McMorrow made the decision to reverse it himself, and that's on him. That's kind of where it lays.
Exactly. I don't think that there's too much more to add to it. Pretty much, I think everybody's in agreement. It's tough luck. McMorrow didn't have to do it. Nobody forced him to do it. Like, unless Bowen literally had like a gun to the back of his throat, forcing him to do that, I can't overturn that. If Bowen resorted to those type of tactics, then maybe as the commissioner I could step in and say that's not right. But until that happens, it is what it is. All right, we got George here in the waiting room. I'm gonna let him in. We can start getting into this trade talk. Any minute. I mean,
Back of the throat was wild.
Gun in the back of his throat.
That's wild.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
All right, we were getting George here. What the hell's going on?
Don't let Clyde Edwards-Helaire get this touchdown. Don't let that.
I need it to be Jarek. I took Jarek 2 touchdowns with a profit boost. It's like 45-1. He keeps going in on like the goal line packages, and he just
I did that for Rashi. I feel you.
George, we got you.
Right on, boys.
All right. So we are here. I feel like it's kind of the men of the hour. We thought that it was going to be Angelo coming on to really talk about that trade, but George also kind of stole the show back by making that mystery second trade with Mikey Bowen, seemingly out of nowhere. I felt like I was so tapped in on the Suns 2-pinch trade, and then I was totally blindsided by the Go Tigers trade as well. George, it is. I feel like it's your night right now. Which trade do you want to start with?
Let's start on the one that people saw coming.
All right. So for those who are unaware, we were talking about the trade between 2 Pins and the Most Athletic Suns. That's Angelo's team. 2 Pins acquired Alvin Kamara, the Suns 26 first rounder, and the Suns 25 second rounder in exchange for Devontae Smith and their own 25 second rounder. So we were I feel like the whole league was waiting to see when the Suns were finally going to trade Alvin Kamara. That shoe finally dropped. I think people are pretty stunned by two pins coming in and what they gave up. I don't think anybody saw Devontae Smith being on the block like that. I don't think people thought that he would be the one that's getting moved in this type of deal. George, take us inside of your head. And what kind of led to you deciding that Devontae was the one that was the receiver that you were going to trade as opposed to maybe some of your older guys?
Yeah, so I mean they hit us up. Sam, never heard of him, texted me and was like, "Hey, we're interested in Devonta." And I had been pretty staunch. I mean, I think you guys have hit me up for Devonta. A couple guys have hit me up, and I was like, I'm not trading Devonta. But after McMorrow blew it up, which we didn't see. Igor texted us and was like, "Hey, McMorrow sold. He sold everything." And so we go in the chat, and we see he's blown it up. He's writing a swan song, and then he's apparently being a scumbag. A few weeks later, so he's really falling apart. But we didn't see that all go down. But when we finally popped into the chat, we saw that a couple competitors have gotten better. They'd added running backs, and our team, I don't know what it is, has not been able to solve that position. And so we felt like, especially with Cup coming back, obviously everybody knows what our objective is this year. It's to get 2.5 and 3 and really solidify the dynasty. And we didn't feel like we were going to be able. I mean, we're getting absolutely nothing from the running back position right now, like quite literally nothing. I think we got 2 points like total in like back-to-back weeks from the running back position. So, and I think it's as competitive at the top, or kind of as wide open at the top this year as it's ever been for the competitors. So we had to make a move to solidify the team a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I was saying that to Pete as we were getting ready to record, because we were talking about Mikey, and we'll get to that trade in a second, but Mikey kind of diving into that rebuild so quickly, just kind of a snap decision. And I do feel like the sentiment around the league is that it's very divided right in half. Like it's the 6 playoff teams, then the 6 teams that are, outside looking in. Pete's the only one that seems to really have somewhat of a shot if he wants to go on a run. It's still early enough where he could really start putting numbers on the board and, maybe sneak into that 6th spot. But I mean, even he has quite a margin to make up for, so it's going to be tough for him. So it does feel like it's really like the playoff picture is set, and then it's now all about how is that draft lottery going to shake out and everything beyond that. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move for you guys. Like, I do feel like the teams that are going to be in the wild card have just as good a shot to win it as the division winners. So, I mean, you guys went out, you made a move, you addressed a position of need. I mean, in years past, you've kind of been able to fall ass backwards into some good running back play, right? With who was it? Damian Williams, is that his name from the Chiefs? Playoff Damian, right? And then obviously you guys drafted Ramondre. I think it was in the 2nd round, and he became what he was last year. So you guys have been able to kind of make do, but going out and making a high profile, big splash move like that is very interesting. On the other side, talking about the 6 and the 6, we do have the Suns. They finally give up Alvin. I know that's one of Angela's favorite players. So that must have been tough to give up. But they got Devontae Smith. And I mean, I'm personally really high on Devontae Smith. I think he's a great foundational piece for a dynasty team. I personally think that he's a guy that could be like a Jerry Rice and play long into his career and put up great numbers into his late 30s and even up towards 40. So I think that he's a guy that has a lot of longevity ahead of him in the league. So I value that a lot in dynasty. Angela, how does it feel to kind of make that big move? Last year, of course, we were looking at you maybe trading Alvin last year, maybe trading Dak last year. Of course, you went ahead, you traded CeeDee Lamb, that got you Gibbs, that got you QJ. But to go out and get yourself a receiver like this, that felt like the position of need for you guys. How does it feel to kind of take your team in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, big shout out to Alvin. Love him. One of my favorite players. But, we kind of had the inverse problem of George, where we've had running backs and we've fallen into good picks with running backs, and receiver, we're just atrocious. There's no youth. There's no surefire. He's a stud player to point at the receiver position for us once we got rid of CeeDee Lamb. So to fill that void and to replace Alvin, tough call on one hand, but an even better call on the other hand in terms of us going in the right direction and getting some sustainable youth. So had to do it, and we feel great about it. Devontae is just one of those guys that, I was happy with making sure that we had to do whatever we had to do to get him.
Pete, what's your read on the trade?
Yeah, George, that's a cool drive fit. Long time no see. It's been a while. I won't be surprised if you're a little dusty on the mic. No problems there. But since it's been a while, I just want to let you know, like, we're not in third grade anymore. You're not, I'm not the same Pete. You can't come in here and bully me around like we're in third grade, like we used to. Those were fun times, but we've grown now. There's some respect on my name. So, watch your step, watch your mouth. There it is. But it's good to see you. It's good to see you. It's good to see you.
How you doing?
I think it was a great trade. I think when I looked at it at first, I could not believe that Two Pins was moving Devonta Smith. But then you look at the rest of his roster. I don't really know who else he would move. Like, the wide receiver core has been elite for 3 years on this team. And going the rest of the way, I've got Chase, Cup, and Diggs over Devonta Smith the rest of the way. Two Pins, I said it last week, their MO is literally trading wide receiver for running back. They've done it the last 2 years. Last year was Sanders. 2 years ago was Gibson. So, I mean, we knew this trade was coming. I think I said it last 2 weeks, actually, but it's usually around the deadline. So I was very surprised they made a move this soon. I think because George said that the top is a lot more closer this year than other seasons, I can see why he made the move earlier in like week 5 rather than, towards the deadline in week 10. So at first, Devonta Smith shocked me, but I don't really know who else he would move to get that running back this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really just a matter of perspective, right? I mean, we're kind of coming from that rebuilding mindset. So we're looking at youth, we're looking at early production, everything like that. And we can't believe that George would give up such like a dynasty piece like that. But when you're a competitor, right? Like you said, Pete, I would easily take Cup and Diggs and whoever else. Who else? Oh, Jamar Chase. Like, I'd easily take those guys the rest of the way. So yeah, when you're trying to make that playoff push, I do think it's a no-brainer. I don't know. I mean, we got anything else to add on that trade, or what do we want to move on? I guess we could stick on it with Angelo real quick, just because we're going to move away from his team. Angelo, you guys do have some kind of older talent still on the team. I mean, I know that there have been talks about Goff or Dak. I know that some teams have been sniffing around about Goff. Of course, you have Mike Evans in the lineup and a guy like Darren Waller as well. Are there more plans? Do you feel like there's more to come kind of soon, or do you feel like it's maybe a slow play, see how it rolls out into the deadline? But what are kind of the future plans? Where do you guys think are going to take the most athletic Suns?
Yeah, it's both in terms of soon, and we'll see how some things play out. Yeah, we know we're in a position where we got to get rid of some of the older players and, kind of get what we can. But, some other players we're still going to be holding on to, like Mike Evans shows no signs of slowing down, and his worst season ever is wide receiver 22. So, if I have to hold on to him for another year or two just to get some value, or next week to flip him, you know what I mean? We'll see what it is. Yeah, the plan is to get younger, and we want to get to that point where we're like a Two Pins at a position where it's like, all right, we lost that guy. Well, at least we have these other 3-4 guys that we can slot into that role. So, the vision is to get younger, to trade what we can. But not looking to jump into bed and help the wrong team, because it is very close at the top, and we knew that they needed a running back to propel themselves to get to that really good spot in the playoffs and have some depth. And, we weighed that and who we wanted to trade with. And, even like last week, we missed out on a Wallace trade where he got Derrick Henry. That could have been an Alvin Kamara play itself. So, we wanted to make sure that we're dealing with the right teams and making the right moves within the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good plan, and of course, who knows who could come along, right? I mean, you might have a team that's sniffing around right now, and then all of a sudden we have a mystery deal like the Go Tigers and Two Pins trade that kind of came from out of nowhere last year. So let's move on to that. So
maybe I do have one more question on this first trade, if I may. Those who were plugged in kind of always knew Kamara and Devonta Smith was the core of the deal, right? But we wanted to know where the picks came in. So we got the 26th Angelo Suns first that went to Two Pins. I guess my question for each team is like, George, were you dead set on getting Kamara and a first back, or do you think you would have maybe not needed that first and just done a second? And then Angelo, obviously you don't want to give up that first, but were you always kind of willing to, or did you get kind of like, you know what, we got to do this to get our guy, Smith?
Excellent question.
Who first here? Me?
Pete?
You take it. Go ahead, take it. Take the start.
You asked George question one, and then you asked me question two. So
I can kick it. I can kick it off because I think we drove the first, like, that conversation. So obviously, I mean, maybe I don't know how many people know, but there was another Devonta deal that was on the table for us. We were going back and forth with another team. We can say it now, Zach Bowen, and he offered us just an insane deal. And the way that deal was set up was we were gonna get Jello's first in 25. And so that was, premium pick, and there were some other picks involved with that deal. So the reason that didn't, so we came back, and one of the things was we didn't necessarily want to trade with Bowen, because I look at Bowen, see, I'm like, how the fuck? I'm like, you're 5-0, and then I look, he's got Jacobs, he's got Swift, so it felt like trading him would be like boosting a competitor, and then we'd kind of be, and also the way the deal was set up, it was kind of putting us in this awkward, like, we're kind of kickstarting our rebuild, but we're like still a competitor, and we just made another competitor better. So we really wanted to not do that. We wanted to trade Devontae somewhere where he'd be safe away from us, at least for this season, because he's also playoff Devontae. When he, like week 14, 15, 16, that guy's stats are ridiculous. So that's when we went back to, the Most Athletic Suns. It was like, hey, a deal, another really good deal is on the table. We wanted to make sure that they got him, and they kind of upped the ante at that point. We were able to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, straight up, once we heard it was Bowen who's, sweetening this deal and adding in these picks, because that's not where the trade originated. It was more simple. It was just, Kamara, a pick for Devontae, no first involved. But then once we heard about Kyron Williams, a first rounder, we're like, all right, like, we need to win this trade. We can't lose this. Exactly. I don't think George wants to boost Bowen's team. It doesn't make sense. And again, I think Alvin Kamara's career is more surefire than any of these 4-game stretches you can point to from these dime a dozen running backs. Like, people put together these 3-4 week spans that launch them into a stratosphere that they have no business being in. We'll see how people are at the end of the season. So I just think Kamara is that consistency base, and like that was my point. I mean, Sam and George did the conversation, and I was catching it on the back end of what was happening. But at one point I just was like, whatever we got to do to get it, we got to get it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's a good lesson for people to learn of, how to play the market, right? I mean, George had one offer, he had another offer, he knew how to kind of play them together and leverage that and squeeze more out of that deal. And I mean, I think it was just, it was Bowen hearing that somebody else was in on it, and then you guys hearing that somebody else was in it. All of a sudden, you got to start paying up, and now look at it, right? It went from being, like you said, a very simple deal, player for a player and a pick, for all of a sudden we got first involved, and it's getting crazy like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is, and I think it's a really great perspective, George, too, talking about how, thinking about who you're trading it to, because you feel like you're still getting equal value for either package, but if it helps your playoff run, or maybe not necessarily helps your playoff run, but doesn't hurt your playoff run by helping a competitor, then I do think that should factor into that decision. Pete, you feel like your questions were answered?
Yeah, great question, Pete. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Let's move on to that next trade. So, following, like, it was like immediately after, I think George must have just pressed both accept buttons in 2 seconds, right? It was a 2-pinch trade made with Josh Winsper's team, Go Tigers. So George and Joe got Hollywood Brown, Jalen Warren, and McMorrow's 25 second in exchange for the Most Athletic Suns 26 first and the 2 pins 25 first. So, I mean, I really, like I said at the beginning, I was very blindsided by this. I was so tapped into what was going on with the first trade. I had no clue that this was coming out of there. So, George, take us behind the scenes of that one now. So you're going back and forth with me. You're talking with the Suns. You're talking with Bowen, right? You're talking to Joe. You're waiting for Joe to wake up. All this stuff. The whole time you're working on this deal behind the scenes as well. What was really going into that? Who reached out to who? How did that start off? Did that start before the Suns talk started up? Like, take us through that timeline.
Yeah, so Joe was sleeping. He kind of emulates his life after Joe Biden, so he was sleepy and Joe was sleepy. And the Athletic Suns, that deal started earlier, and we started getting that conversation once we knew that, or once I had figured out that moving Devontae was going to be an option. I start looking at our roster and, what does that mean for us at the receiver position? And just looking around for the other thing is we really needed a back. And so there was times where we didn't think that the Kamara deal would go through, things like that. So we're just looking around to see. We definitely wanted to make a move for a back. And also, like I said, we were trying to evaluate that receiver position. And we looked at Bowen's team. It's terrible. Didn't realize how bad it was at the time that we looked at it. And he was kind of, with some injuries, obviously, to Jeddah, it's over, right? For this season, at least. And he sold a lot to get to the team that he has. So he had no picks. And we were just trying to say, like, all right, if we're going to ship out Devontae and we're really going to go win now, then we got to replace him with a player that, at least in this season, we feel like could potentially outscore him or score close to, what his production is going to be, just in terms of we're giving up somebody who's a wide receiver 2 on their team to get kind of like the main target on the other team. And then we're shooting for more of a project running back in Warren to try to fill that position. So that was a big factor too. That deal getting done was a big factor in us going with the Kamara deal, where we felt like in the past, we gave up 3 firsts for Antonio Gibson because we thought that he was going to be reliable. That didn't work out. We gave up, Ayuk for Miles Sanders, and he stinks. So we kind of didn't want to put ourselves in a position where 2 running backs busted. We thought that would kill us. But if we got one where it's like, all right, we know we're going to get stable production from this running back, we'll take a shot on this other running back, and then we'll try to replace Devontae's production, at least for this year, with somebody who could potentially score in like his range. That was the thought process behind that trade.
Yeah, I mean, you went right out and then you got rid of Devontae and then you replaced him with another, really good young receiver. And Hollywood Brown's a guy that has always put up great numbers. Like anytime he's been healthy, right? When he starts the season healthy and he plays until he gets hurt, whenever he gets hurt, he usually goes down as like a top 15 receiver. And then, of course, either he stays healthy and Lamar got hurt, or Kyler Murray got hurt and that hurts his production, or he just got hurt and then he falls behind in the overall point ranking. So when he's on the field, I mean, he always seems to be putting up double digits. He's always a big play threat, always a touchdown threat. So, I mean, I think it's a good piece for you guys to go out and get. And then, like you said, with the running back issues, just adding that type of depth that Warren supplies you with. And then he also has an opportunity in the future to carve out a bigger and bigger role for himself in that Steelers offense. I think those are 2 good plays for you to go out and get. Pete, we always love talking about Mikey on the show. We're always fascinated by the Go Tigers team. You said before the show that you were kind of surprised at how quickly he was jumping into this rebuild. What's your read on Mikey's side of that trade?
Yeah, I think Mikey's side was a good move. I don't think he could ever the trajectory of Marquise Brown and Jalen Warren. I don't think he could ever get more than 2 firsts for those guys packaged. So he clearly is committing to a rebuild. He's got a gimpy Joe Burrow, a hurt Jettis, a up in the air Justin Fields. He's clearly committing to the rebuild this year, or at least a retool. And to do that, you get rid of the guys that aren't part of the long-term vision, right? That's Hollywood Brown and Jalen Warren. When he puts his starting lineup together to compete again, those 2 dudes aren't going to be in his lineup. So to get 2 firsts for those guys, I think it's an absolute win across Mikey's side. When it comes to George, like, this is a veteran move. It's a veteran move, all class. It wouldn't be LP show unless I took a ricochet shot at Big Brain, but it kind of reminds me of Big Brain trading Purdy for those 2 extra running backs, James Conner and AJ Dillon, with the intentions of trading for a quarterback, but not having anything lined up and then just ending up with nothing. And I think they're still trying to get a quarterback to this day, and they still don't have one. So it was a veteran move. George had one lined up. Marquise Brown, I think he's a little underrated, wide receiver 14 right now, and 14th in targets thus far this year. 14th in targets. Targets lead to fantasy points. So I think that was a great trade on both sides. And Jalen Warren, I picked him up in September of last year. I loved him as a prospect. And I mean, I think he's 1 year behind Najee Harris, right? So they're already splitting now. Najee could be gone in 2 years, and that could be Jalen Warren's backfield. I don't think they bring anyone else in the way he's running. So I like the project running back. I like it across all sides.
Angel, you got anything to add on this trade?
Yeah, I think it helps both teams. I mean, George just flips that first he just got and gets Hollywood to backfill Devontae's spot. It's a smart move. And then Warren, yeah, Najee looks slow as hell right now. So that's also another good move, good hedge. Yeah, I just thought it was cool, or I don't know. It's like dominoes. You knew those trades were happening simultaneously. I don't know if Mikey knew that it was contingent on the first one, but that was like boom, boom. No, it didn't even have anyone digest the first trade.
Yeah, George, did Mikey have any idea that was coming?
No, Mikey had no clue. I keep Mikey in the dark. He's a good kid, but you can't, overload him with too much information at one time. So kept him in the dark on that one. And it's funny because at one point Zach was like, I want a 25 first. And I was like, I literally cannot trade you a 25 first. It's impossible because that pick was already committed.
Yeah, it's taken. It's spoken for.
One subtle thing that we did do towards the end was we swapped. So it was going to be both of our picks, the 25 and the 26 pins picks. We swapped the 26 pins for the 26 halal. And basically the idea there was when we blow it up, I think it's important that we have our own pick. I don't know when that's going to be. We might just keep competing and just die, go the McMorrow route and just die with those players on our team until they're, have the lowest value they could possibly have and then sell them. I mean, he did get a decent haul, but it's clear going, this off season last year that he didn't have a team that could compete. But when we do decide to blow it up, it was important that in that year we own the pick so that as bad as we get the value from that pick. So that was a subtle swap that we did there at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting to see kind of how you guys view your timeline. It looks like you're trying to stockpile picks for a couple years down the road. So that tells me that you view at least the next year or two, maybe another year after that, as like your realistic window to keep competing. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because we always talk about McMorrow, right? He was the first champion and then he had to, he held on and then he had to launch this rebuild, everything like that. But I mean, he only won once and that was the very first year of the league. We always say I was a Mickey Mouse championship, yada, yada, yada. But for George and Joe, right, they've been so competitive. They were, the 1.5-time champs. They're obviously looking to make a push for a 2.5-time champion crown like that. So it'll be interesting to see how, as we get into like year 5 and then beyond, how things start to shape up and how we really start to see kind of the ebbs and flows of Dynasty and how teams go up and down and how really what owners in this league are kind of built to deal with that cycle here. So I don't know. We got anything else more to say about this?
I just want to say, I mean, we're always trying to compete. I mean, we're that's our MO. I mean, we want to compete. I think that there's, to your point, it's interesting in Dynasty where you get these people that almost put themselves in a perpetual rebuild. They kind of forget that the objective is to win, and they're like so obsessed with just not you, Pete. All right, everyone knows the vision is in full fucking force. All right, the vision's in full force. But
That's great.
A couple of these teams, even going to your point about like Bowen. I mean, Bowen had some injuries, but just in general, I feel like people are quick to hit the eject button because rebuilding is fun. I mean, it's fun to have draft picks. It's fun to have projections. It's fun to have the future, but I think that sometimes that can kind of get in the way of people. I think like Wallace is a great example of like he could have been in a rebuild for like 3 years. And he came in and was just like, I mean, I'm just going to try to compete and kind of see where things fall. And now he's got, a solid team that, is really good. So I think that's keep competing is what I would tell everybody. And like, sometimes you need to blow it up. Like sometimes you have to like rebuild and just like sell it all. But you would be surprised. Like, I mean, Kieran, you could probably speak to this even better. Just like how much you can keep yourself in it if you just compete and like you just look up one day and you're a 5 seed and you're upsetting someone because somebody got hurt. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sports, right? So like someone can get hurt.
I mean, and I think my favorite example, and it's something that we've talked about, and when we do move on to the next topic, it'll be about kind of rebuilding its strategies and how our league structures it and everything. But we talk about that first year, right? And kind of the controversy that led to us doing max points for to determine draft order and everything like that. When it came down to the final weeks, George, you guys infamously benched Pat Mahomes for, I believe, Jalen Hurts. I think he did make a start that week, but he was not. This was like rookie year Jalen Hurts, end of the season. You sat Pat Mahomes. You guys kind of tanked your way out of the playoffs in the final week. And the Vibers did the exact same thing. And that led to you guys getting Jamar Chase. I don't know who the Vibers ended up getting, but they didn't make the playoffs. And I looked and I calculated the points. If they were to stick in with the seed that they would have been the 6th seed, they would have gone on to win the championship. Their team scored enough points every week that they would have won the championship. That they just stuck with it. But instead they tanked their way out. I think they might have ended up with like Javonte Williams. I think it was that draft class. So, I mean, maybe they're happy with that decision, but at the same time, it's like you said, I mean, if you just stick in it and you play, like, you don't know like how a team might get injured, right? You don't know what the hell could happen. All of a sudden, the star player for one team gets hurt on the first play, or straight up like their team just gets shut down. They don't put up any points. So it really is like an any given Sunday type of deal. So I'm always a fan of trying to compete. I mean, of course, I think it's better to have some sort of plan, right? I always say it's worse. It's the worst thing you can do is be stuck in the middle, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So it's like either you're going to be balls to the wall competing, or balls to the wall trying to build that youth and really build that up so that a year or two down the road you can start being more competitive. But like I was saying earlier too, I mean, we're not even in year 5 of this league yet. So it's like I think people are very quick to hit that eject button and get out of it and start rebuilding. And I feel like multiple teams in this league have been through like 5 different cycles of turnover with their roster already. But it will be interesting to see, my idea of this league is that we'll be 60 years old still playing this dynasty league. So I'm interested to see 5, 10, 20 years down the road how a lot of teams almost like what that line chart's looking like as far as like ups and downs. All right, George, if you want to stay on, I mean, we only got one more thing left, but we're just going to be talking tanking, so I know that you probably aren't too interested in that. But I did just want to give a very quick statement before we log off, just about the state of the league and how we handle things, because I know that I had to call out McMorrow last week. He was not starting a full active roster. I just want to make it clear, when we do this, right, we have the max points for system in place. That is to promote starting what you view as your most optimal lineup, because benching good players no longer helps you at all. I mean, if it helps you not win the division, sure, but if you're tanking, you're probably not going to be backdooring your way into many wins to really be competing for that division title. So go out there and try and play spoiler, right? So McMorrow, he started Tony Jones last week, who was unemployed. He's now been picked up by the Cardinals. He was starting DPJ, who was on a bye week. I had to text him and just tell him, right? The obligation is to start a full lineup. That does not mean starting Carson Wentz when he's not on the team, starting Tony Jones when he's not on a team, but starting the best lineup that you feel you can make based off of the roster that you have. You are never expected to go out and trade for a quarterback or a running back or a wide receiver just because you need one to fill in for a bye week. You're not expected to go out and spend fab, especially now that we have the $1 fab minimum. You're not expected to go out and make acquisitions, drop players, add players for the sake of filling out a lineup for that week. But if you have a receiver on your bench and you're starting a receiver that's on a bye week, that's unacceptable, right? I've said, illegal tanking. I always love using the quote that the government used when they were trying to put restrictions on internet porn and everything like that. You can't really define it, but you know it when you see it, right? I can't tell you like, oh, you can't do this as a tank job. You can't do this. But if you're going out and you're starting players like that, that's just unacceptable. Go out, start a full lineup and do it, because benching a guy like Josh Downs, who's putting up a good amount of points on your bench, does not help your tank at all. The max points for it's like a best ball thing. And especially McMorrow, who plays in so many best ball leagues, he's always drafting best ball lineups. You should know, right? It doesn't matter who you start, because they're going to take the best players, whether they're on your bench or in your starting lineup, put that on your max points for, and that's how it's calculated. So go out there, try and play spoiler. Nobody wants to lose to the shitty team, and it's funny when the shitty team does squeeze out a win, pulls the team down into the mud. I feel like that covers it. I mean, Pete, you're kind of you have the vision. You were kind of the godfather, right, of this league when it comes to the tank, right? Would you agree with that? Do you have anything more to add when it comes to that?
No, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Like you just summed it up there. Those are the rules. Those are the expectations. McMorrow wasn't following them, and now he is. I don't think it really will matter, because I don't think he'll spoil anyone the rest of the way. But if you don't understand how to tank in this league, then I'm not sure. Or I guess legally tank. If you don't know how to legally tank in this league and make your own pick better, then you probably shouldn't be in the league. I think McMorrow knows now, and I think we should be good the rest of the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said, you'd think that after so many years in the league, you just have a general idea of how the league works, especially the fact that this is one of like the few real rules that we have set in stone. That's like one of like the few things that we take very seriously in the league. So just go out and start a lineup, right? Be competitive. Take care of your team, okay? Just have some pride. Go out there and compete every week. But yeah, I mean, at some point, like if it were to become a week-to-week issue, then the league would have to step in, and we might have to start talking fines. I don't know if that means docking draft picks. I don't know if that means docking fab or anything like that. But I mean, you can't continue to break the rules right in the commissioner's face and expect nothing to happen. So as of now, McMorrow just has a warning. If it continues, then we'll have to step in. And I think the rest of the league should take this as a warning. I don't think it's a Spider-Man deal. Everybody gets one. This is a league-wide warning. Do not try and pull that shit because I'm watching and I will do something about it. All right. I mean, I feel like that covers everything. I don't know if our guests have any parting comments, but I would like to thank both of you guys for coming on, opening up the books, letting us know about your team. George, Angela, you got anything to say before you sign off?
No, I don't have anything. Pete, I thought this was our best. I thought this was our best show. I think we're really growing up as adults, and we're really putting it together. Talking over each other. It's life is crazy, man.
I agree. It felt clean. I think I got a couple wins under my belt. I showed I can put together a team, and I got a little more respect on the Slippery Pete name now. So I appreciate it and agree.
Who knows? I mean, maybe someday George is talking about his window maybe closing a couple years down the road. Maybe it will be kind of like a 80s to 90s NBA type of thing, like the Pistons into the Celtics into the Bulls. Maybe George will pass the torch off to Pete as he's ready to compete and they're ready to start launching their rebuild.
If I need advice on a rebuild, you know who I'm going to.
That's what I was just about to say that. I got you any advice. The Godfather.
And then when Pete's finally on top, George can kind of be his mentor and just let him know, how to keep his head on his shoulders, not let his head get too big. So George can maybe teach Pete some lessons on how to handle life at the top. So
I'm going to Sean. I want that spreadsheet that he pulled up on the. I want it.
You were talking about Fitz?
I said, hold on, let me look at this.
Hey, I will say he had Sam Howell as his number one quarterback prospect 3 years ago. So maybe he was onto something. Maybe he is the true visionary. But
watch. Whoa.
All right, fellas. That's all. That's the Lex and Pete show. We will be back next week. George, you still want to join us next week for the power rankings as well?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. So we will see you next week. It'll be Power Ranking Tiers 3.0 with special guest, our 1.5-time champion, George from Team 2 Pins. We will see you next week.